Hi, my name is Paige Gore, and I will be discussing how Indonesia falls on the corruption scale and why it is ranked the way it is, leading into how Indonesia business practices are tolerated. Indonesia is ranked 96 out of 180 countries, with a score of 37 out of 100 on the corruption scale. This means that Indonesia has a serious corruption issue. Indonesia's business environment suffers from widespread corruption. Business operations are heavily restricted by a corrupt judicial system, law enforcement, and public administration and officials. Extensive bribery within law enforcement and public officials causes concern for foreign investors because public officials are often exploit legislation to extort various types of business processes. For an example, extorting informal payments and bribes from companies in the process of registering a business, filing tax returns, or obtaining personal permits and licensing. The natural resource sector of Indonesia is also very corrupt due to weak oversight by the government. Corruption legislation is poorly enforced and does not address the facilitation payments such as bribery. Business practices in Indonesia are quite unique. You should always avoid using the left hand in any type of exchange. This can include greeting someone, passing them something, or even receiving something. This could include things like business cards or gifts. This is because the left hand is considered unclean. If introduced to several people at once, it is customary to introduce yourself as the eldest if this happens to be the case. Because in Indonesia the elders have a great respect towards their name. You should always avoid giving gifts because it is not widely practiced, even though Indonesia's business relations are based on trust and relations with personal contacts. Giving gifts is considered informal, while the relations should always remain formal. Other Indonesian practices that are interesting are: people should avoid touching or reaching over a person's head, especially an elder. This is considered shameful and disrespectful. One should always watch body language. If someone has their hands on their hips or folded arms, this can signify that they are angry. Handshakes are only necessary when meeting someone for the first time. When you're meeting someone for the second time or after, you should do a slight bow or nod of the head instead. A man should never be shaking a woman's hand in Indonesia unless she comes up to him first initially. A typical greeting in this culture would be selamat, and this means peace. Public display of affection is not acceptable in any part of Indonesia. It's the only public expression that is There should never be any type of public display of affection because this is not acceptable in the Indonesian culture. The only one that is acceptable is the shaking hands of a woman, but only if she came up to you first when y'all initially meeted. They also do not see conflict with invading personal space in crowded areas. But if someone does happen to give you personal space, this would be considered a high respect. The reason that they do not reach over someone's head is because the head is considered sacred and is said to be where the spirits reside. Crossing your legs is considered disrespectful because when doing so, the bottom of your feet will be facing the other person you are talking to, and this is not a good thing in this culture. It's typical for everyone to run late in the business setting in Indonesia. They have no sense of a timely manner. Meetings are never very long because they do not get right to business. They will take a few meetings just to figure out what that they want to do with each other. They love to bargain in the business setting. A thing to remember is that Indonesians always want to please people, even if when trying to please someone they might say something untruthful, and this is to avoid making the other person unhappy.